Hey, what's up, y'all? Is Bryan Hill, and I'm here with my wonderful guest, Adrienne Morris. Adrienne, how are you doing today?
I am amazing and excited for you.
Awesome. So we will be covering today. Adrienne wrote a book, Mind Over Misery. She is an author and a wonderful young lady. I had the opportunity to read the book myself, and I had a lot of great takeaways and experiences to grow from and learn from her book. And I think the audience, whether you're male or female, you will be able to have the same enjoyment that I had coming from this book. And we are going to take a deep dive. But before that, I want to introduce Adrienne to the audience because even though she is my first guest on my podcast coming forward, we are actually childhood friends. And we both come from, or at least when I met her, was back in Orlando, Florida. Through baseball, Adrienne used to be my teammate. She was my teammate for a couple of years, playing baseball, not softball. And I know she's a big Yankees fan to this day. And I don't necessarily cheer for the Yankees. I do like rooting for them because they've had some of my favorite players growing up. But I know she was a college athlete herself. So, Adrienne, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce to yourself to the audience, and then we'll get into some of the fun stuff right after that.
Alrighty. So I am Adrienne Morris, like you said, author of Mind Over Misery. We are childhood friends. I grew up playing baseball with nothing but boys up until I was 16 years old. So it made me pretty tough, and I talk about that in my book because my dad always said, never let the boys see you cry. So I felt like I couldn't be soft in front of them. But I developed this tough skin growing up, and when I became an adult and a young lady, it helped me learn how to be soft and drown out the noise and just love on people. I am currently a live-in nanny and I work with kids, so I have to be soft. That same tough love I was given growing up doesn't work for these new age kids. So I think that me going through all the rough and tough parts in life, growing up with all the boys being mean to me, they used to say like, oh, if guys are mean to you, that means that they like you, but that's a tough way to show, someone liked you.
Yeah.
But as an adult, it has really helped me to just become soft. And it has shown me, like, there's a different way to say things or there's a different way to do things. And it doesn't always have to be in a tough way. So,
Yeah. So I want to start getting into some personal stories that we share together. Because I think some of these could even tie into the book to really give the audience a better picture and depiction of where you came from to get to where you are today. So I think one of my favorite stories growing up is, well, it's not really my favorite story, but growing up, I was probably the biggest kid on the Yankees team that we that we had, and Adrian was obviously the smallest kid we had on the team, and she's 1 year younger than me. But we got a chance to play on the Rolling Hills Yankees together, and by the great Coach Mitch, who just loved on us and mentored us and pushed us and gave us every opportunity. I tell people to this day, I have a lot of coaches to be thankful for, and Adrian's dad is actually one of them, Coach Jerome, because he was probably the first one who actually started to be critical, but in a positive way towards me. And I think even when we started in the minors together on the Marlins, he was the coach, and I forgot my helmet one game, and I had to borrow her helmet. I don't even know how it fit. Because I'm a good, even back then, I was a good foot and probably 80 pounds bigger than Adrian. So it probably didn't fit all the way in my head. But I was such a competitor and I didn't like making outs, let alone striking out. And I think I popped out in the infield and came back and I slammed it. I had a bad habit all the way up to high school, slamming my helmets, and I slammed her helmet. She had like a custom spray painted helmet. I came and slammed it, and Jerome he's Bahamian, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so he has this great thick Bahamian accent, and he came over and he just laid on me like basically like, "Hey son, this ain't your helmet, but even if it was your helmet, you shouldn't be slamming it, and you could have cracked it, and your mom would have had to, repay us for it and get her another one. We didn't want to have to go through all that." I was like, "Yes, sir, won't do it again." And I probably didn't slam my helmet for like 4 games, which is probably a life record for me. Um, but even going before that, so I've been in a lot of like hitting competitions and home run derbies, and Adrian, in my 22 years of playing baseball, she is probably the only person to ever beat me in a hitting competition. I think I've won 3 home run derbies. I've tied two, and I think she's the only one I've actually lost to. And you're asking like, how did Adrian beat me in a hitting competition? And that was because they had, I want to say like 100. We were playing on a 200-foot little league field, and they had 100. She played the smart route because she's very competitive herself, and she focused on hitting line drives over that 100-foot fence. And me being the macho kid I was, I only wanted to hit home runs. So I think she even beat me by a couple points. But I think that just goes to show that she is kind of like a David facing Goliath in life, and her ability to like hone in and get the job done no matter who the competition was. And I know me being her personal teammate, she probably did not fear me, although I probably made her sweat a little bit in that competition. But she beat me, and she beat me fair and square, and I'm pretty sure I cracked and broke my own helmet after that. So Adrian, what is your side of that story?
So I am so competitive and I am still so small, 5'10", 120 pounds. And I think,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
And because I'm so small, I feel like I have to find another way to win. Like, I don't have the strength that you have. You can lift like five of me, like I can't do that. So I feel like I always have to find another way. So as long as you teach me the rules or tell me the rules, I always put it in my mind, like, I'm going to win. And growing up playing baseball with nothing but boys, I had to be tough. So it wasn't like I ever saw size or male or female. I always looked at any sport is just a competition, no matter what. So one of my core memories though with you is I just remember you always being so big, and I just felt like anytime you went up to bat, you were going to hit a home run. Like, we could always rely on you to score a run for us or score some runs for us. If it wasn't going over the fence, it was going to the fence. And this one day we were playing on the Yankees and you hit a bomb, and this woman had her car parked in the back of the fence, and you hit her windshield, cracked it, shattered. She was so mad for her seeing her car and then storming up by the dugout, and she's like, who hit my windshield? And they were like, ma'am, calm down. You're at a baseball field. You parked at the back of the fence where there's potential for home run hitters. I mean, you didn't say anything, but you
Yeah.
just done your job.
Yeah.
So that was my like core memories with you. You were just always this powerhouse. And even in that competition, you did make me sweat because I still get nervous, but I still always have in the back of my mind, like, I'm gonna win regardless of size. Size never matters to me. You're gonna have to outsmart me. That's how I think.
That is awesome. And just following that up, I know you were a competitive athlete going into college, sorry. But even before that, like I just remember, because again, I'm 1 year older than you. I remember being at baseball practice, and I remember you showing up for like high school baseball tryouts at Edgewater because we went to the same high school as well. And in the back of my head, I'm like I hope she makes it because that would be awesome. Like I don't really know how much of a shot she has, but I also knew how tough Coach Gerke was, and he was like a militaristic, hardcore, Bill Belichickian type of coach. But I knew that wouldn't bother you, but I was like, man, she's got a tall task. Cause like I struggled to make the baseball team, and I'm like, man, but I remember even being, cause I want to say I was 15 or 16. I remember just being proud of you secretly. And even though like early in high school, we didn't talk a whole lot cause just, we were just on opposite ends of the spectrum, like with classes and friend groups and all that. But I still remember being secretly proud of you, even just for coming out, because a lot of girls, when they get to high school, who even grew up playing baseball with boys, they would immediately just move over to softball. But I know you being as tough nosed as you are, and always being up for a challenge, that was remarkable for you to come out there. And I want to say you tried out at like third base and like second base, and I remember you taking BP, and I was actually proud of Coach Gerke for even giving you the shot because, again, this is out of 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and coaches back then aren't as fluid as they are now. So he could have very easily just shut you down and not even let you come out. But um, what in you through the challenges of going into high school and going into college, what things really provoked you and kept you motivated to continue to challenge and push yourself going forward?
So I think my size drives me because everyone looks at me and they're like, you're so small, like you're just a girl. And I'm like, I'm so much more than that. And Coach Gerke, he actually did let me play one summer. So that my eighth grade summer
Okay.
to high school. He let me play. It rained a lot, so a lot of our games got rained out. But I did get to play in a few games that we did have. He started me. I mean, I had so much fun. And then when the year came, he let me try out. And then he was just like, insurance isn't going to be able to cover you. And he was like, softball is just like baseball. And I talked to him myself. He didn't even talk to my mom. He talked to me. And I'm like, no. I said, the ball comes different. The bat is different. The field is smaller. For me, I think my norm was playing with boys because I'm like, girls, they cry, they're softer, like, and that's I just wasn't used to that. So having to transition to softball, I did give up because I'm like, he just is making up excuses at this point. I paid to play over the summer. I showed you what I could do. If you just don't want to put me on the team, then, I was like, maybe I just try this softball. But I think that it was honestly for the best because I wound up being a really good softball player. And then I wound up getting a softball scholarship to play in college. But
Mhm.
even going into college, I had similar challenges. The coach was like, oh, yeah, you can play volleyball and softball, but pretty much my size, I don't know how beneficial you'll be on the team. And I'm like, man, like, why is it always my size?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I came from? Like playing at Rolling Hills, everybody was so tough. The boys were tough. The coaches were tough. Like the things that they said to motivate us, like you had to have some tough skin. So, even with Coach Gerke, like it was easy for me to push on because he was being gentle with me, but he was just giving me sorry excuses.
Mhm.
So it's like I could handle him, but everything happens for a reason. I'm grateful he turned me down because it made me just go harder in softball, and then I wound up getting a softball scholarship.
Awesome. So the personal journey and the personal stories are great, and I've really loved kind of going back through memory lane with you. But let's stick to why we are here, and it is your wonderful book, Mind Over Misery. So I'm a big believer in one's thought process and how it can help or hinder someone's many decisions made, big or small, each day. How is your thought process today in relation to the beginning of your journey?
So now I am much stronger. I've had so many experiences to make me mentally tough on and off the field. I always relate my life to sports because I've had so many challenges in sports. I'm going to go back to high school. Basketball, Coach Lewis. I played basketball my freshman year, sophomore year. I took a break my junior year and played soccer. And then my senior year, I tried out again. First day of tryout, he was like, oh, I don't think that you're going to make it. I like 4-year athletes. You took last year off. I was like, whatever. I show up again. Day 2, he was like, oh, there's a junior that could do the same thing that you can do. And I would get more years out of her than I will with you because this is your senior year. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Showing up for day 3 of tryouts, and he's like, well, you're not tired enough after the running drills. But I'm so fast. Like, I'm sorry, like I don't have to work as hard as the other girls, just all the excuses.
Mhm.
And I just pushed through. I wound up on the team. He was like, oh, well, I'm going to put you on the team, but I don't know if you're going to start. Okay, music to my ears. I'm going to show you after game 2. Well, first game, I was 6 man off the bench. And then after game 2, I wound up starting. So I believe that I've always had this strong belief in myself that I can do anything and that I will, show you otherwise. I'm going to change your beliefs. And back then, I think that the sports, I just was kind of like on autopilot, like, okay, I got to show this person, I got to show this person, I got to show this person. So I've always had this strong mindset that, or I'll say positive mindset where I can talk myself through anything. But after sports from high school and college, I got into relationships and I had to build a different toughness because, guys, they come with different tips and tricks. And so that made my mind mentally strong. I didn't have the sports to rely on anymore. Like that was such a fun time. And in high school and in college, you pretty much practice. I mean, even when we were kids, we pretty much practiced 7 days a week. So
Mhm.
it's easy to ignore real life experiences. So here I am, I get into relationships, they're not going so well. This one not working out, that one not working out. And then I feel like I start developing like this mindset, this negative mindset, and I start falling into this misery. I remember just waking up and I left this guy. I literally moved out, got my own apartment. And I remember just being in the room by myself. And every day I'm like waking up, replaying these negative stories over and over and over again. I'm just working, coming home, working, coming home, and thinking of all these negative things. And I just remember, like, I got to do something about this. Like, I have to change the narrative. I have to change these stories. I can't wake up and go to sleep thinking all of these negative thoughts. So that's when I began to journal and really like try and find like a new side of me, because I didn't have baseball to rely on or volleyball to rely on or any sport consistently, 7 days a week to rely on. So sports, having a positive mindset, relationships, sometimes it's hard to see the positive in
Mhm.
them. And I went through like this whirlwind of negativity. And I feel like that gave me a different type of mental toughness, I would say, for life.
Good. Gotcha. That's phenomenal. So in your book, you talk about your personal experience a lot in this book. But this will give opportunities for the reader to relate to you and learn from them. What brought about wanting to delve into personal details of your life to be able to help others?
So I believe we live in this world of technology. Just doing a lot of research, it seems like a lot of people are using AI to create things. And for me, we're still human. We can use AI, but we're human and we connect with real life stories. And another thing that helped with my thought process is I started going to something called Toastmasters. It's an international club where you're able to work on public speaking and it helps with communication. And when I joined, I've been there for 2 years now. And when I joined Toastmasters, it just helped. Sorry, repeat your question again.
Let's see. This is so the question is about your personal experiences that you speak on a lot of this book and the opportunities that it gives the readers to be able to relate to you and learn from them.
Okay, thank you. So when I got to Toastmasters, my first, I mean, I was like shaking. I remember I signed up, I paid, and then the lady was like, okay, would you like to do your speech next week? And I'm like, next week? Like, that is so soon. I just joined, give me a break. This is only my second time here. And so I had no clue what to do. And I was like, well, no better way to do a speech than to do what? Talk about yourself. So I went up there, my first 7 speeches, and I just told my experiences. And a lot of the feedback that I got was that I was very positive and super vulnerable. And to me, I'm like, I'm just sharing my life story, and when you're given a speech, you're looking at the audience so you can see who's paying attention, you can see who's engaged. And then when your speech is over, people talk to you. And based on the feedback that I got, I'm like, good at being vulnerable. And all I'm doing is sharing my story. Like, to me, I felt like I was connecting with my audience, by sharing a story instead of just some other members at Toastmasters, they'll generate a speech from like Chat GPT and try and share that. And you can tell that it's put together by AI. You can tell a real story from AI, but you can also, I would always pay attention like the audience and the people who would use like chat gpt or whatever systems that they're using. You could tell that the audience wasn't engaged because people feed off of emotion. And when I would share my stories, I could see that they would like ride the wave with me or like ride the roller coaster. So I think it's easy to just be me and
Awesome. I like how you bring real science into this book. In the reading, you talk a lot about cognitive behavioral therapy and how to use them to evolve. Would you care to share any additional techniques or experiences to help listeners engage with you more?
yes. So I'm going to go back to when I was that guy. And when I left him, I realized, I remember waking up in the bed and I'm like, if I look left and if I look right, nobody is here. Like, so here I am thinking he's the problem, but clearly it's like all in my head because now I still have these negative thoughts. So I grabbed a journal, and what I would do was, so with cognitive, the CBT, you change your thoughts. So you catch the negative ones as soon as it happens and you change it to a positive one. And you repeat that over and over and over again. And so I did the same thing with journaling, and I would literally write the same thing every single day. Like, people pray or they meditate, but then you have to remember everything that you're looking to pray for every single day. A lot of people want a lot of things. So if you have 10 things that you're looking to have, are you going to remember those 10 things in prayer? Are you going to remember those 10 things in meditation? Most of the time, you're not. So what worked for me was just writing the same thing over and over and over again. There's power in pen to paper, and it's almost like coding for the brain. You know, there's IT specialists who do coding for web pages and stuff, but I feel like for the human brain, it's, you know, the words that we use or the words that we write. And so every time I would journal, I literally had to think about all the words that I was writing and the things that I was like looking to change or looking to manifest every single day. And that, I believe, was key for me. Another thing I would do was, if I was stressed or if I was frustrated or if I got bad news, I would go for a walk. I would get some sun, and then I would listen to something positive. Was bothering me, like whatever the bad news was, I would look something up on YouTube to change it to something positive, and it would like talk me through it. So instead of spiraling and replaying the same story and saying like, oh, well, I should have said this, or I should have done that, or why do I keep thinking about it like this, or why did I accept that? Well, I put something positive in my mind that gave me an answer to the problem that I was having.
That is awesome. And I have recently kind of been looking into CBT myself, more so in like the last year and a half, because I'm a person who likes to know why. And when you start asking why, and not necessarily like why me, like how, like can I figure this out, and or like can I respond or help this person better or help myself better if I have a better understanding of this. And cognitive behavioral therapy allows you to be more self-aware, like you said, in journaling and experiential recording, as I like to call it, to be able to self-assess better, to
Mhm.
be able to help identify things better, because a lot of people aren't even aware of the situation they're in, and even when they are aware, they like to be in denial because they're not ready to change, because change is hard, whether you think you're comfortable with it or not, whether you think you can easily adapt to situations or not. Change is not hard. And kind of like you spoke in the book, when you realize that, hey, yes, this person might not be the healthiest for me, but I myself am a common denominator in a lot of these situations. Maybe I need to pull back, because I remember you talking about pulling back and separating yourself and going into isolation to be able to get to a place where you could stand on firm ground for once, and then from that ground start to build a new foundation to move your life in a better direction. So I love that piece and that side of it from you. And I hope the readers are able to come to a place themselves where they can get to a place where they can self-assess, document what's going on, and realize how they can make their next move from there.
Yeah.
So transitioning from the CBT to a place of more being even more introspective, you talk a lot about mindfulness and awareness. How would you say it took you to get really in tune with yourself to become more and better self-aware?
So during that time, that relationship, this was in 2021, and
Uh-huh.
I just left and I just went through this isolation period. I would just sit by myself. I would literally go to work and just come home. And it was tough at first. And I was like, do I even like myself if I can't even, be with myself? So I think having time to yourself to like think your own thoughts. We talked about, playing baseball together. So my whole life, I played on a team sport, where we had to work together, always being around people. I have a family who, invited you guys over on the weekends for parties every single Saturday. So I was used to constantly being stimulated or having 10 friends calling me every single day or texting me all day, when we only had like unlimited text messages and free phone calls after 9 o'clock. Like, I'm using 1,000 text messages. So I was used to constantly talking to someone. But when I sat with myself in isolation, I kept thinking about all the relationships that I had been in. And I'm like, all of these guys are so very similar. So I'm like, what pattern is in me that I keep attracting that? Or what's making me put up with these patterns? And so sometimes you get into these relationships because you're like, oh, we have 5 things in common. Like, yeah, let's do this. And then a year later, you're looking at that person like, what made me choose you? And during my isolation period, I had time to analyze all of that and just focus on me and my journaling, writing the same things over and over and over again about what it is that I actually want, what it is that I'm actually looking to attract. It's easier to see. But I just kept going from relationship to relationship, and then it just clouds your mind because now you're thinking for two. I was never able to just think my own thoughts. So the journaling helped transition me out of like needing someone to process my thoughts. I was doing the processing on my own. And then after I would see, whatever it was that I was writing come to fruition, I'm like, okay, I did it. Like, one of the things, I was feeling like I was confident, but I wasn't exuding confidence. So I would write every single day, like, I exude confidence, and Toastmasters literally helped me with that in the simplest way of just giving someone eye contact. That is a lack of confidence. And Toastmasters helped me see, like, Adrian, you're not as confident as, you thought you were. So now in relationships, whether it's friendships or whether it's a male that I'm looking to date, or, a family that I work with, because I have to work with their kids, but our mindsets have to align in order for me to do business with you. So I just take everything that I've journaled, everything that I've worked on. I know what I want now. And if it doesn't feel good to me, if it doesn't keep me calm, if I don't feel like the love is unconditional, if I don't feel like we're reciprocating, like, I'm not always going to be a giver, sometimes I'm going to be a receiver. I'm not falling into those relationships where it's one-sided or people don't get it. If I have to explain how I need to be loved or how I want to be communicated with, now I recognize those patterns immediately. And I'm like, like, this isn't going to work for me. Like, sorry, I'm not interested, or sorry, we can't do business together because you don't communicate how I communicate. Are you going to show up for a meeting on time? Like, these things are important. So I recognize people's patterns at the beginning, because a lot of times we see those common things at the beginning and we're like, oh, we're so the same. And then a year later, you're like, who is this? And they were the same person that you met in the beginning. You just decided to ignore the signs. So recognizing the patterns early on helped me so much. And now I only deal with people who love me unconditionally and have a similar mindset.
So for me, something I've gotten better at and tried to be more consistent at, and something I definitely, because I'm a personal trainer. So while most people come to me for their physical health, most people really end up coming to me more for their mental and emotional health. And I spend significantly more time talking about my clients, for the majority of them, more about their mental and emotional health than I do their physical health and how that's going. And a lot of them, especially when they're starting, especially when they're coming from a really bad place, whether they are really deconditioned, recently divorced, struggling with kids in their family, or just maybe they've just realized there was some bad friendships going on in their life and they just removed themselves from it. And that was things that were adding on stress and adding on hardship to their life. I'm a really big proponent of, like, don't let a bad moment turn into a bad day, and don't
Mhm.
let a bad day turn into a bad week, and don't let a bad week turn into a bad year. Because it is much easier to allow yourself to continue to have that t- uh, bad period of space in your life versus acknowledging that you're in a bad place and trying to turn it into a positive and giving yourself a reset. But at the same time, it's like it's okay to allow yourself to have a bad moment or a bad day, but don't allow yourself to stay there. And sometimes it is great to like, okay, I'm having a bad day. I'm not going to make it worse, and maybe it's not going to get better. And I don't want to really open up and talk to anybody about this today because it's not a huge issue, but like, let me reset and start back tomorrow. So when you have a bad day or you're having a bad moment, but I would like to speak more to a bad day. So when you've had a bad day on whatever level you deem that as, what does the next day look like for you from kind of start to end? And really more about like the start. Do you have a routine or a cycle, or do you like steep into meditation? And how do you allow yourself not to allow that bad day to linger on any further?
Okay, that is a really good question. I literally was just thinking about this morning because I was watching some girls play like volleyball on TikTok, and I just remember thinking like, even when I was in a relationship, if I was going through it, like my boyfriend at the time, I'm like, it never affected my game because when I am in the game, like I don't hear anyone, I don't see anyone. There could be an audience. If you ask me after the game how many people were in the audience, I literally have no clue because I just zone in. But I don't have sports anymore. So, real life example, some things that help. I love my mom. She has always been there for me. I am very self aware. So, when I call her with a problem, I will cry. Crying is free therapy. And I realize that there's nothing wrong with crying, and you're going to feel the emotion anyways. You either suppress it and it's bigger, a week later, 2 weeks later, or you cry it out, you talk about it. When I call her, I do call her with the problem, but I also acknowledge like the positive that's going on too. And a lot of people don't have a routine. For me, I wake up every day, 6 o'clock. I start work at 7. So from 7 to 9, I'm with the kids. And then after that, I'm in the gym and I'm working on book stuff or I'm working on something for me. So keeping a routine helps with that too. When you have a lot of idle time, 6 to 7 hours, and something bad happens, you want to sulk in it. You want to sit in it, and then you want people to feel bad for you. But you kind of need some hobbies. You need a routine. You need something outside of your job that stimulates some type of happiness for you. So I think that's what works for me. Oh, another thing is reminders. Everyone has, well, most people have an iPhone. And if you set reminders, sometimes it will shift whatever it is that you're going through. Like you can be experiencing something bad, but your 2 o'clock reminder might be the words that you needed to hear to say, you know what, like they're right, like this reminder is right. Like that's exactly what I needed to hear. Like, Adrian, you're fine. Keep pushing through this. So having some type of reminder, or I have sticky notes, I used to have this one, I had a desk job and I put rebuilt myself in private and came back a beast. So I feel like I attracted that isolation period, but it was exactly what I needed. So little stickies or reminders, you have to find what works for you. Like I said, I love the sun. I'm from Florida, so going for a walk, sweating it out in the sun, listening to something positive. I don't stay stuck for a day. Even if I feel those emotions, I might be emotionally entangled, but once I cry, once I talk about it, I'm like, okay, these are just lingering feelings and they're going to pass, but I don't let it stop my routine.
That is great. In your book, as I've been a reader of it now, I think it may be fair to say that a lot of, especially your earlier core issues, stem from your relationship with your biological father. His name, or not his name, but yeah, his name and his situations that you grew up with are brought up in a lot of different aspects. And I think it's fair to say a lot of people's core issues, not all, but some, start with a parent or parents, no matter what the background may come from, whether
Mm-hmm.
they are impoverished or rich, no matter the religious background, no matter the crime rate of the neighborhood. I've seen in my experience, thankfully, having trained well over probably closer to 800 or 900 clients now. I mean, over the decade I've seen, I've had clients come from all different kind of backgrounds, from all over the country, from different country, and we've all had some kind of issues, and a lot of those things stem from childhood, and stem from how our parents parented us growing up.
Mhm.
How would, coming from your book, how would you say your relationship with your biological father shaped you as a young lady going into adulthood? And how has that relationship, as it's continued on into adulthood, shaped you as a woman today?
Another good question. So I had two totally different parents. Like my mom, always there. Like I played every sport. I played soccer, volleyball, basketball, softball, and then baseball outside of school. I was in every club you can think of, and my mom was always there. She kept up with every deadline. If I had to do some project, like she was helping me, always rooting for me if I wanted to run for something, like run for SGA or run for homecoming queen. Like she was going to help me make my sign. She was going to give me the creative ideas. She was going to be there if I had a 2 o'clock game. She was going to somehow come on her lunch break, go back to work. I don't know how she did it, but she was there. Now, the biological father, he would say like, hey, I'm going to come, and then he wouldn't show up. Or one day, well, not one day, when I was probably about 8 years old, we stayed in this cul-de-sac, and his friend was on the street that led to the cul-de-sac. And every day, my brother and I, we could see his car is at his friend's house every single day. And he just would never come say hi to us. I actually did a speech on this too, like there's no hi, no goodbye every single day. And so then we got to high school and we were staying in an apartment, and the apartment, he stayed on the red side, we stayed on the green side, and I'm moving into this apartment so I could be closer to you guys. And he still would never come over to our apartment. Then his year lease is up, and he's like, oh, I'm going to move in even closer. So he moves to the green side. Not only the green side, but the building right next to us. And that year lease, we only saw him twice, and that was only because my brother and I went over there to I think to say happy birthday and I don't know, some other holiday, but it was only 2 times. And so I just realized he was always so close, but so far away. And because of the love that I felt from him, even though Daddy Jerome, the Bahamian father, was there the whole time, there's just something in a kid that always yearns for the biological parent. And so because I was wanting my dad's love so much and I could see his patterns, this isn't the love that I'm looking to receive. I attracted that and I talk about this in the book too. I attracted that in my male relationships as an adult. And I just remember thinking this just feels like my dad. This just feels like my dad. And it hurts, and I got tired of hurting. And after that last relationship, that's when I went into the isolation, and I was like, I have to figure this out. I have to break this pattern. And during that isolation period, I say this in the book too, that's when I call my dad and I was like, I am hurt by you. And I think that, you have affected my relationships with men. And he said, whatever I have to do to fix it. No guy had ever made me feel like, okay, let's fix it. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it, all the anger I had, all the sadness I had, all the anxiety, I feel like just went out the window. And I'm like, because I had rehearsed all these lines about what he was going to say and what he was going to do, because I only knew the stories about him or with him, just not being there, saying you're going to show up. So I faced, the fear, and I feel like I tried to get to know him as an adult. But because I'm so self-aware and because I'm so strong now, my father's patterns have not changed. At my book launch, he called and he was like, oh, I'm coming up for your book launch. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know you were going to come. And he was like, yeah, I told you I was going to come. So I'm like, okay. So he always stays with my sister, and my sister has like a clubhouse. So I rented out her clubhouse for my book launch. This man went to my niece's soccer game and literally missed the whole book launch. But I am so strong now, and I choose people who love me. Like, there were 25 people there, the closest people to me, and I just felt so loved. I just felt supported. And I'm just like, these are the patterns I'm looking to have in my life. This is the unconditional happiness I'm looking for. This is the unconditional love that I'm looking for. People who want to be there are going to be there. So his actions no longer affect me.
I think that's very important and key for women of all ages to learn, whether you're a young woman, a woman, well into adulthood in her late 20s to early 40s, and even women beyond that. Because even I think my wife, for example, I feel she's a very strong woman. I feel like she could live completely independent of me and still be happy and profitable and engaging in her life and be just. And so when even we have our own issues in our relationship and our marriage, she is somebody who's been always been very patient, but I think all women have a tipping point and like a limit as to what they will tolerate and endure. Some women a lot more than others. And I think even the further you push them, the shorter that leash gets. But
Mhm.
she has always confronted me kind of like how you confronted your dad. And it is still up to that individual who you're confronting to change their behaviors. That's why, I enjoyed reading the CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy part of it, because the other person has to be willing to change for the betterment of themselves and the betterment of their relationship in order for things to really get on solid ground again and move forward. But the woman or the person, the engager, still has to reach out, because even if, one of the people is making the road like more of a one-way road than a two-way road, you still at some point have to give them the opportunity to make it a two-way road. And if they try to and they say they do and they don't, then at least, like you said, like and how you did, you get to a place where you can choose to move differently from there on, and you can still love that person, but maybe it's love at a distance.
Yeah.
And that's something I have to talk about. I've had to do not so much myself, but a lot of the young athletes I've coached, and as they moved into young adulthood, and even family members and friends, but especially a lot of my clients, is like sometimes the people closest to you in life can be the ones that can and will hurt you the most.
Mhm.
And you don't want to allow that continue to be a toxic relationship in your life. And so
Yeah.
it's like you have to be able to learn how to love that person, but love them at arm's length instead of, a hug like embrace. So I love that part about your book, is even though, I'm a male and you're a female, and I actually never experienced that personally with, in my family, I still can resonate with that, because we all have that father or mother or friend or lover that has never changed their behavior, even though we've wanted them to. But you can love them, but you can love them from a distance going forward.
Yeah. It was probably the lesson I've had to learn in life. Like, I remember calling my brother, like, and he's like, I don't understand why you're letting it bother you. And I'm like, yeah, me either, but I'm trying to get out of it. But I
Yeah.
think thing I did as an adult was to face it head on, like give him that call, tell him how I feel, like as an adult, see his patterns, see if he's willing to change. Like, even after the book launch, I talked to him. He did his same pattern of, oh, he's sorry, crying, all his things. And then he like jumped the gun, like, oh, let's see each other once a month. I'm like, you don't even talk to me once a week. I don't expect you to, be able to come see me. Like, that's too high of an expectation for you, going back to you living in the building right next to me and not even coming to see me. So I was like, let's start with the weekly call. Let's just start there. I mean, he had to set a time or an alarm. Like, I'm like, someone who loves you does not have to set an alarm, like, this is not real support. But I told him, I was like, you just don't have a pattern for me,
Yeah.
and I just had to be okay with that. Like, because as a live-in nanny, from day one, these people have had my best. interest at heart. These people love me. And they tell you, like, you're the top 5 people that you hang around. Well, it's 5 of us, They're my top 5, but they love me. They look out for me. I mean, it's a trade off, but it's a good trade off. I feel loved. They help in every way they can. They obviously cover all my expenses, my groceries. They give me a gas stipend, phone stipend, car wash stipend, like, in exchange for me like taking care of their kids. I had gotten into an accident. They paid for my rental. Like this is how people show up for you. They both are in corporate. I can call them anytime. They may not have time to talk. They might be on a call. They might reject my call, but they're immediately going to text me and say, "Hey, can't talk, but I can text. Like, let me know whatever the issue is." That is good communication. I don't feel ignored. I don't feel unloved. Like, I always feel heard. If I have an issue, how I confronted my dad, if I confront them about anything, they're like, your time is valuable. Your opinion is valuable. We, respect your flexibility. We just want the same thing in return. Everything is fully talked about, and it's changed behavior anytime either one of us confront each other about anything. And I'm like, these are the patterns I'm looking to be around. This is the love and the support I said that I wanted. So when I have people like my dad in my life, I'm like, man, you could go back to the ocean with all the other fish, because I know what goodness feels like, and I'm not going to chase you or chase a relationship that isn't benefiting me.
Yeah. And I really resonate with that because I just thinking about communication is one of the, and not just like in my relationship with my wife, because she's a great communicator. But I think in all of my personal relationships and even in extending out to like my business relationships, I'm really big on communication. And at the same time, I understand that not everybody communicates the same way. But I do feel like there's a certain threshold of communication that has to be had to make relationships work. And when they don't work, when I personally have gotten to a place where I feel like somebody doesn't, is kind of checked out enough that they're not able to communicate with me on a basic level, then I'm like, okay, this is somebody that I need to keep at arm's length. I don't need to cut them out of my life. I don't need to hate them or look down on them or think any differently of them. I just put them into the appropriate place in their life, in my life, that they belong in correlation to me, because I feel like there is a certain level that even I'm willing to withstand. And I'm a man who's I try to be very patient and understanding of all situations. And I try to be slow to judge and quick to help. But again, you still have to have a certain level of self-respect for yourself. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of your book is resounding in having a certain level of respect for yourself, because that allows you to respect others better. Same time, as we grow and evolve into adults, we have to communicate to people in different ways how they can respect us. And when you can respect others and you teach others how to respect you, some people will do it very organically and naturally. Some people have to learn a little bit, but that's something that also resonated with me in the book, because people who don't, I think there's a pattern that people who struggle to communicate effectively, again, whatever that means for that relationship, those are the people that always take way more than they give. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter if you're a male or female, that can be very damaging. But
Yeah.
I've had a ton of female clients, and some that are mothers and some that aren't mothers. But there are people who have a very balanced approach in how much they give and take. But a lot of them give way more than they take, and that leads to them getting taken advantage of. And I think that can be very healthy. And that's something, a pattern I definitely see a lot more for women, which isn't a good thing over men. While
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I still recognize there are men who get taken advantage of, get whether they allow it or not, or whether they realize it or not. But that's definitely something I see more in women, and so I think that's something that they can definitely learn from your book as well. It's like have to be able to communicate effectively for relationships to be able to flourish. You have to understand a certain level of self-respect and to be able to respect others. And you have to be able to be mindful of where others are at, but most importantly, be mindful of where you're at so that you can continue to give your best to others and be at your best for others. Because there's people who rely on me in my life, but even in your life, being a living nanny, you have 4, 5, 6 other people who rely on you to be at your best, but you're not going to be always be at your best. And even on your worst days, you still have to bring it for them. So that's something to kind of summarize your book for me personally. And I hope the readers and listeners are able to engage in that way, move forward as a big takeaway for them.
Yeah, working with the kids, they teach me a lot about communication because kids are very literal. So if I tell them to do something sometimes and they do it exactly how I said it, I'm like, that was on me.
Yeah.
I could have given, some better direction. Or if they do something I don't like, I tell them, like, hey, I don't like that, like, don't hit me or don't touch me there. Or, and I always tell them, like, use your words because I don't understand when you cry, So communication is huge, and self respect too. And I get the opportunity as a live-in nanny to, practice those things with the kids and teach them, like at a younger age. These are a lot of the things like I wish I knew, instead of having to get all these experiences. I feel like I'm helping them skip some steps, to be a better communicator or to be a better lover. And even sometimes I'm calm.
Yeah.
Like 95% of the time, but sometimes the kids do things that I just don't understand. And so I'll ask them, like, what in your brain made you want to do that? And most of the time their answer is, I don't know. But kids are just curious.
Uh-huh.
But for me, when I may raise my voice a little bit, or if I say things in a mean way, they'll tell me,
Uh-huh.
you're mean. And I'm like, the way I said it, like, I didn't mean to be mean, like, I'm just trying to get through to you, and if their safety is involved, I will raise my voice,
Yeah.
but I can see in the kids, like, how it's affecting them. So I think that those things are so important. And I mean, my whole journey, I poured into the book, and I hope that my personal experiences and my tools and techniques that worked for me work for the audience too.
Awesome. All right. So let's start to wrap this up. It's been a wonderful almost hour now that we've been on, but I just want to ask you to give one more gem or diamond in the rough or key takeaway from your book so that might curate a little bit more interest in your book for people to go grab it and read it and work from there to learn from you.
Okay, so what comes to mind is mind reading. Sometimes, a lot of times, we have been so accustomed to those patterns, and I'll say for me, the relationship patterns. And when you meet a new person, you think that those patterns are going to show up again. And what I have found myself doing is I ask questions because you don't know what's in that person's brain and you don't know their life experience. It might not be the same as your experience. And sometimes we could be fearful to ask those questions or to have those hard conversations. But a lot of times I'm going to use the live-in family, when I ask them questions, it's never what I was thinking.
Mhm.
Like, and it always goes easier than I was imagining. So don't think that just because you've seen these patterns before in this person, their response is going to be the same way. Trust yourself and trust your growth and trust the fact that you have grown in a way and you're okay with hard conversations because it helps calm your mind and clear your mind of all the stories that you play and assume, someone is going to say or someone is going to respond.
That's great. So tell listeners where they can acquire your book and let them know where they can follow you on social media.
All right. So you can find my book on Amazon, Ingram Spark, Barnes and Noble. I actually have an author signing at Barnes and Noble May 10th. The Cumberland location, which is Cobb Parkway, from 1 to 4 p.m. if you live in Atlanta, Georgia. And the second question was what?
Tell them your social media platforms.
Social media is Adrian with an S underscores journey. Adrian's underscore journey. And that's on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And I post and I share gems from the book and tools and techniques that work for me daily.
Awesome. Well, Adrian, it has been a pleasure. One, getting to kind of reconvene with you. It's been over half a decade since the last time we've been able to talk. Like I say, we were great childhood friends, and even though we weren't super close in high school, we definitely kept in touch and talked, especially later on in high school. But it's been great getting to kind of re-know you, and it was really invigorating for me to be able to get to read your book because it's like I remember you as young Adrian, but obviously I have little to no knowledge of what your adulthood journey was. But it's good to see. It was good and enlightening to see your journey from childhood into teenage years into young adulthood, and then adulthood into full blown grown adulthood as where we
Yeah.
are now. So I've really enjoyed our hour plus together, and I hope the listeners did as well. And I hope that they go out and get your book and read it, and maybe one day you'll have a bestseller. But even if it's not, I always think if the information I'm giving can help at least one person change or better their life, then what I said made a difference. And you've already done that for me. So I think you've already won. So I hope you continue to win with the coming months and years and many, many readers to come to this book. Again, the book is Mind Over Misery, and I hope that the listeners go grab it. Like I said, on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, many other places. Follow her on social media, and until the next time, I hope our listeners really enjoyed this podcast, and we have more to come in the future. That's one thing I assure. I hope y'all have a good rest of the day, and we will work from here.
Alrighty. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You have a great rest of the day.
You too.